Even Elon Musk sleeps in his own factory, right? He's a billionaire many times over.
Now I have established 8 years of my firm. I am out in the market. I have an established portfolio. How to get those bigger clients now?
Entrepreneurship, especially in the early years, it's like a sine wave. It will have its ups and it will have its downs. A lot of designers start with a lot of ego.
Is there any thumb rule to survive in that, I would say, finance zone?
Every business will succeed if it is differentiated. If your parents say it doesn't matter, do where your dreams take you, then take that
Go for
chance.
it. अगर आपने कभी भी दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट टर्मिनल 3 विजिट किया होगा तो आपको एक इंस्टॉलेशन जरूर याद होगा। वो सुनहरे हाथ मुद्राओं में बने हुए जो पूरी स्पेस को चांद चांद लगा देते हैं। हर रोज वहां से कई लोग गुजरते हैं, कई लोग फोटोज खिंचवाते हैं और कई लोग आगे बढ़ जाते हैं, लेकिन कितने लोगों को पता है कि वो किसने डिजाइन किया है? जो वो इंसान है वो एक्चुअली बरिस्ता का इनिशियल डिजाइनर और फाउंडिंग इन्वेस्टर भी रह चुका है। आज हमारे साथ है अमित गुलाटी, एक एजुकेटर, एक डिजाइनर और एक एंटरप्रेन्योर, जिन्होंने इंक्यूबिस जैसी फर्म एक गैराज से स्टार्ट करी। आज इंक्यूबिस इंडिया के सबसे रिस्पेक्टेड स्टूडियोज में गिनी जाती है। सो गाइज, आज की कॉन्वर्सेशन उन लोगों के लिए है जो अभी अभी डिजाइन कॉलेजेस से निकले हैं और अपनी डिजाइन फर्म स्टार्ट करना चाहते हैं। कैसे करें, कब करें, आज इन कॉन्वर्सेशन में उनको सारे जवाब मिलेंगे। सो अमित, लेट्स गो बैक टू द टाइम्स व्हेन यू स्टार्टेड इंक्यूबिस, राइट? आज अगर हम इंक्यूबिस को देखते हैं, हमें लगता है कि इट्स सो एस्टैब्लिश्ड, बट लेट्स गो बैक व्हेन यू जस्ट वर आउट ऑफ एनआईडी, राइट? आपके दिमाग में क्या माइंडसेट था? व्हाट वाज योर करियर पिक्चर लाइक? आपने इंक्यूबिस को आई थिंक एक गैराज से स्टार्ट किया, राइट? एंड हाउ डिड दैट कम अबाउट?
So, in the mid 90s, when I started, I just graduated from NID. और उस टाइम जो challenge थी that most designers either took up a job or they did something. In those days they called it freelance.
Right.
And our faculty used to tell us that don't use the word freelance because it means you are free.
Right.
That you have no work, you are sitting idle, and your fee will also not be a lot. So the word free was very misleading, and it would typecast you into a certain kind of person who is not highly busy and highly competent.
Right.
And in China there is a saying that if you want your work done, go to a busy person. If somebody is free, that means there's a reason why he is or she is free.
Right.
So we were guided not to use that word.
Right.
So my vision after I started working on my own was primarily to set up a multi-disciplinary design studio, which would then over time do work in India and overseas. So there was a sort of dream. One didn't really know where to begin because I didn't really have a business education. But I had a lot of belief that something is possible without really knowing the steps.
Right.
And I think 30 years is a long time. There have been steps and there have been missteps. And I think if I had to do that journey again, it is potentially doable in a much shorter timeline.
Right.
But the initial first step was all about having a dream and then, taking baby steps towards it.
So when you started Incubis, what was the initial challenges like? Was it getting the first client, or it was the uncertainty कि आपको काम मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा, या it was your self doubt maybe?
So the only uncertainty was that what do the clients look like and what do they need?
Right.
Because you see, a design school, a design education is a bit of a bubble. You are in a very cocooned environment. You do get exposure to some clients. In fact, we were very fortunate that at NID we had a lot of sponsored projects. We did get real world exposure, but you can't run a studio on one project.
Right.
You have to have a diversity of clients, and I think the initial phase was to really tell people what a design consultant can do. And at that point, very specifically what an industrial design consultant can do, because that was my specialization.
Right.
The multidisciplinary part of it was something that happened over time, but initially the focus was on what I had learned in design school.
So how did you create that space? Because I believe अभी क्या है कि कई लोग designers की importance समझते हैं, but back in 1995, I don't think वहाँ पर the designers were kind of given that sort of importance जो आज उन्हें दी जाती है.
You see, you can only give importance to something when you know what it is. So in the mid 90s, people didn't have any idea what was design other than apparel design or what we call fashion design. Other than that, there was no understanding of design, whether it is industrial design, whether it is ceramic design, whether it's furniture design, whether it is exhibition design. These other kinds of design, animation design, these were not in the knowledge of even corporates, forget the
Right.
general public. So it was quite a struggle initially. I think the real challenge was telling people what we do. And I think most of that initial phase of the first 1 or 2 years was to, of course, get a few projects and try and execute them, but also meet as many people as one could and tell them what a design consultant does. And then see if that awareness, once people had, could be a starting point to convert them. And it took a long time. And I think one of the other things we did a lot at that point was to partner with any forum, any event, any conference where the conversation of design was happening.
Right.
So try and be a part of that. Try and tell people that we are one of those consultants. This is what our work looks like.
Right.
So I think one of the important things that shifted the needle was that, since at the back of my mind, even as a student, I had that idea that at some point in the future, I would do something on my own to ensure that your student work is also of a professional quality.
Right.
You know, this is something that a lot of people don't realize. And if your student work is at a standard which the larger set of clients, the general public can appreciate, then the chances that they will be able to understand what you can do, what your capabilities are that possibility becomes a lot more tangible.
Taking that point into account, like you mentioned कि एक portfolio बहुत ज़्यादा काम आता है to get your first client.
Yes.
Right?
Because what does the client really start with?
Exactly.
Yes.
So if I am a 23-year-old and I'm just out of college, I've mastered my, say, portfolio. How do you get your first client? What can you say that how did Incubis got its first client back then?
So there were two routes that we adopted, and then there were other routes which I'll talk about. The first was that at NID, between the period 90 and 95, we were given the opportunity to do a lot of industry projects.
Right.
And these projects were sponsored by industry, and I built my portfolio around such projects. And also the contacts while building those projects at NID that I had made with people in industry, I leveraged those contacts to meet people and also showcase what we were doing.
Right.
So the first 2-3 projects are all based on contacts that were created on campus with the industry, and then leveraging them to start something in a real life context.
So would you like to give the advice to a 23-year-old to network once they're out of the college?
You can start networking while you're in college.
Okay.
And while you're in design school or architecture school, see if you can get at least 2-3 live projects. At least it could be a hypothetical project, but based on a live context.
Right.
So that the outcomes have a lot more relevance. And the parallel thing that one needs to do is to try and make sure that the quality of work is equivalent, if not better, than what professionals are doing in the industry at that point in time, so that your work stands out. So the other way to get a lot of traction is to take part in a lot of design competitions.
Right.
While you're still on campus, and then see that your work is widely known. Today, discovery of professionals doesn't happen on a one-to-one basis that you go and meet somebody. It happens through Instagram, it happens through web, it happens through third parties who curate design work, like Design and others. So you should be present over there. If somebody Googles you, even as a young professional, or they see your Instagram account, they should see adequate number of projects that look real, which are not 3D simulations, but they are photographs.
Right.
Even if they are good quality models, even if they are small projects, people don't really care about big or small projects for a young designer. They care about things that are complete, things that are standing, and things that are giving them the conviction that you're capable of doing something and taking it to conclusion and making it successful. That's what people are really concerned about. And the third is to ensure that you're always looking for projects that build on what you've done in the past initially.
Okay.
So don't spread too fast Don't spread your portfolio into very vast number of sectors too early. Start with a core and then funnel out, so that at least for a few years you are building on what you have created in the past. Otherwise, you'll spread yourself too thin and nobody really understand what you're good at. Because initially people want specialists. Once you've got a reputation, they are willing to, bet on you and let you do new things. So you have to play that in a very, very well thought through manner.
So like you mentioned कि starting में ही portfolio बहुत widen ना बनाए, right? But let's talk about Incubis, right?
Right.
आपने instead of taking the traditional path कि हमें सिर्फ architecture करना है या सिर्फ design करना है, you are a multi-disciplinary firm, right? You have worked in films, you have done sets, you have even designed gadgets, right? So how did that come about? Was it a market-driven decision, or it was something that you have always thought कि मैं सब करूँगा types?
I think it was a bit of both. Like I said, the initial phase was quite focused. I think first 3-4 years was all about product design. Right. But like I said, we were going to conferences, we were trying to create design awareness in a fairly wide number of industries. And slowly people started giving us projects which were not really in our core, they were in the periphery of what we were doing. But they said that you have the same capabilities. It was not just from our side. A lot of our clients told us that, okay, you understand how to, apply empathy and really get to grips with what people want.
Okay.
So if you are doing that, say for product design, creating new consumer products, can you create that for a publication? Can you create that for the design of a space? So a lot of our clients actually, who were obviously more experienced, had a wider knowledge, were able to extrapolate that these guys who can create empathy driven solutions in the product domain can apply that exact same process to other domains.
Because you have understood the client better.
Yes, or the end user better. So that insight that we can transfer our learnings to a wider portfolio of work was somewhere also coming from our very, I would say, evolved clients. And we were very fortunate that initially we came in contact with such people who guided us.
Right.
So one of the other things is to find good mentors, because you don't assume that you can do it all. You have to find good mentors. You have to ensure that your family supports you.
Right.
You have to ensure that initially you have to keep your costs low, so if you can work out of home. So you need help all over, and whoever is willing to help, make sure that you use that help. I mean, don't try and be so independent that you don't want any help and you're trying to do it all alone. It sometimes won't work.
Right. So that's actually a very interesting point that you mentioned. Then when you start it, you need support from your, I would say, family as well. Even Incubis, the other co-founder, is actually your brother, right?
Yes.
So what do you feel is the quality, or I would say the necessities that one needs to look for in, say, a co-founder? Because the kind of firm you guys have established is huge, and that brings about a lot of responsibility as well. So what are the qualities that one should look for in the co-founder they are going to partner with, right?
Yes. So initially there were more co-founders also, and of course Rohit was there, and I had a colleague Paldas from NID who was also one of the initial team members and co-founders. So I think all of us complemented each other. So maybe one person is better at engaging with people and understanding what they need from a client and consultant relationship. One person is good at the really technical work. One person is good at operating the studio.
Right.
Maybe somebody has skills which are not easily available in the wider market. And like when Rohit came on board, he had architecture capabilities, and we had product design capabilities. And we had another co-founder who had engineering capabilities. So, when everybody complements each other, then you are able to offer that wider spectrum of services. So, from a client's perspective, a specialist is meeting them.
Right.
As a company, you may have a wider portfolio, but you have specializations coming together to offer that wider portfolio.
So Amit, जैसे you did your I would say graduation from NID and I did from SPA. हमें डिज़ाइन स्कूल में क्रिएटिविटी, एस्थेटिक्स, प्रोसेसेस सब सिखाया जाता है, बट व्हाट दे ऑलवेज मिस इज द बिजनेस ऑफ डिज़ाइन एंड व्हाट गोज बिहाइंड द P&L sheets and what is profit loss. I think that is always missing in a design firm, right? So, like you are one of those person who have actually started things from scratch. So, is there any thumb rule to survive in that, I would say, finance zone? Is there any tips or anything that you would like to say young designers who are out there trying to build their design firms from scratch?
So I think you have to understand what are your costs and how you compute your fees, and then also how you create proposals that are easy for the potential client to understand. So your most valuable asset is your own time. So value that correctly, but don't try and charge too much at the initial stages. Make it attractive for the client to work with somebody who's relatively untested, and reduce the risk that they are putting into it. So how do you de-risk it for the client? Um, Maybe having a co-founder who complements you and has a little more experience or has more specialized skills and maybe has more industry exposure could be one way of de-risking it for the client. The other way of de-risking it is to say, okay, my fees are going to be based on success milestones, but that fee is not going to be as high as what my competitors who are more experienced will charge. So the client is not putting in all the money at one go. They're putting it in stages which are backed by very tangible success goals or milestones.
Okay.
So these things are important to create that pull that yes, this is somebody worth working with. And of course, your own enthusiasm, your ability to project your capabilities, your conviction, these are the things that attract you to clients. Um, so it's important firstly to understand what the client is looking for, and then completely configure yourself and the offerings of your studio or your consultancy in a manner that they find compelling.
Right.
So it is very, very critical that you understand what they are looking for,
Correct.
and you are the answer to their needs.
Right.
How do you become the answer to their needs? That's the way you get your first few clients, and making it easy for them to justify the financial impact by keeping it low or not keeping it too low that people don't value anything that is free or too low. Also keeping it low that it is attractive, but not so low that they don't trust you. You don't buy things that are very inexpensive also, because you
Yes.
don't trust whether they have it in them. And of course, get your numbers right in the sense that you don't make a loss.
So exactly my point where I want to bring that question. Like for example, let's put it into numbers. For example, I'm just out of college. I've landed that one very big client, right? So how should I charge for my very first project?
So the cost, like I said, is basically a function of your time. So suppose you need 4 architects to work on that project, hypothetically, and each architect's fee is or monthly cost is say 50,000, just as a calculation. So you're looking at 2 lakhs,
2 lakhs.
right? Then you may need another consultant on the project who may charge you 1 lakh, right? So all of these are your direct costs. Then you have overheads. Where are you working from? Is everybody working from their individual homes? So then you don't have to add a cost for that,
That
other than
rental
the
fees is
cost
gone.
of using some electricity. But cost that out, put that number in somewhere. All the costs need to be on a piece of paper or on a spreadsheet, saying, okay, these are all the costs I'm going to incur. Even if you need to buy a special computer to do that project, or you need somebody to help you create a 3D model or an animation, make sure all those costs are factored in, so that you know your direct costs, your manpower costs, and your overheads.
Right.
Right. And then over and above that, initially the profit may not be a lot, but because the base is small, initially ensure that your profit is at least about 30%.
Okay.
Because you need some money to put into your venture, into your studio as you grow. If there's no upside, you won't be able to keep your team together. If there's no upside, you'll have no surplus left to invest into your studio. So of course, when your turnover goes up, then the profit margin also comes down.
Exactly.
So it may come down to maybe 10-15%.
Yes,
Yeah.
architectural firms usually run at say 10% to 15%
Yes,
of their
yes,
margins, right?
yes. So that is when they're much bigger, but initially don't keep it so low.
Okay.
Because you won't be sustainable. So you have to ensure that you have calculated your costs in a way that you understand what that sustainable point is, and then make sure that sustainable point is not out of reach for the clients you are trying to attract. So it should not be too high, but it should not be too low also. People don't value things that are too low in terms of the pricing. You will think it's poor quality. So positioning, you know, in brand and marketing, it's all about positioning.
Right.
How are you positioning yourself? What is your personal brand? What is the brand for the studio that you're creating? You have to start thinking about that very early on in the process.
And when you say early on or say later on, you say 5 years, 6 years, like initially, like for example, I have started my firm, and initially 2 3 years I'm trying to charge a little lesser, right, to get that my portfolio sorted and get more clients. Later on, I'm at that stage where I'm charging a little higher and I'm making a margin of say 20 to 30%. And now I am, say, I would say a graduate. I am into that 8 to 9 years. I have established my firm, and now how should I get those bigger clients? For why I'm asking this, because you have personally worked with a lot of biggest of the biggest brands. You have worked in films like Kalki. You have even worked with the brands like 1MG, Apollo, etc. Right? So now I have established 8 years of my firm. I am out in the market. I have an established portfolio. How to get those bigger clients now?
So again, like I said, you have to create a portfolio, create your live projects in a manner that they all have a multiplier effect. When seen together, they give the other person, the potential client, a conviction that you have a wide range of clients who have done successful projects with you, and those projects are similar in scale, similar in value to what they want to do. So it's a laddering up of the process. How soon or how much time it takes is all dependent on circumstances. How quickly are you able to do those larger projects? Do you want to do those larger projects? Some people just want to focus on residential, some people just want to focus on homes, some people may want to just do healthcare projects, but usually it's always small to big. You have to be very fortunate, very lucky to get that really big client early in your journey. Even if you get that client, you have to ensure that you do a good job, which will be expensive, which may cost you more time. It may also cost you more resources. You may need other people to support you on making sure that it lands well. So
Right.
I think there's no right answer for that, but make sure that you have some kind of a roadmap in your mind, that it all adds up. Don't make it so diverse that it doesn't add up, right? But don't make it so narrow that you don't have the ability to diversify your risk. So
Okay.
it's a bit of a tightrope walk. There's no single answer, but as your career progresses, the zone in which you are operating will become clearer to you, and then you reinforce that.
Okay.
So it would be a very distinct journey for different professionals. I can't say that everybody will go through the exact same journey, but I think it is important to have that sense of perception, to have a pulse of your own venture, that this is where it's going and this is what I need to do next. And very often that pulse, that guidance may come from somebody who is a well-wisher or a client sometimes. So always go back to clients who have finished a project, or you've completed a project with them, and say, what could I have done better?
Okay. You're
What?
taking feedback.
Yeah, constantly, because without that, sometimes if you do a lousy job, they'll give you feedback straight off. So
Right.
you have to figure out what not to do next time, or how to improve the gap between expectation and what you're doing. And be very present. You have to really lead from the front. You know, creative professionals, studio based practices, they are also about teams. They're also about the creative leader. It both are equally important. So one is to create more creative leaders, so that the team becomes more broad based, it becomes more powerful, it gets more traction. But at the same time, you have to be always present. Even Elon Musk sleeps in his own factory, right? He's a billionaire many times over, but he doesn't let it slip out of his hands. He's
Yeah.
present, he's watching the pulse, he's seeing the production happening. If they're launching a new rocket, he's right there. So, you know, in management, they teach you about delegation, that, you know, you have to have a team. All that is perfect. It's great. If you have a large organization, you do need teams you can delegate to. But what is always important is to know where you need to be present. You are always there. And also which parts to delegate and which parts to do yourself. Which are the things that are really going to shift the needle for your studio.
Studio.
You have to understand that.
Okay.
Which meeting to attend, which presentation to be in, and then how to ensure that if something is going wrong, how to steer it in the direction that the client wants it to go. So it's a constant process of watching, listening, and responding in real time.
Okay, so Amit, I think that you've talked about so many projects. You talked about how important some projects are, and you get that first big client. So I would like to talk about my favorite project of yours, which was basically the Terminal 3, the Mudra installation that you did.
Yes.
एंड ऑनेस्टली इट क्रिएट्स अ फीलिंग जब भी कोई एनआरआई वापस आता है या कोई भी बहुत दूर जाता है फिर वापस आता है दे ऑलवेज screenshot that they always take a picture see hey I'm returned right and it's a symbol of returning back to India it's a sign of just being back to this space right so when you were designing it what was your thought process first of all प्रोजेक्ट आया कैसे और आया तो आपने उसमें क्या सोचा वर यू थिंकिंग अबाउट एनीथिंग स्पिरिचुअल इट वाज ऑल मुद्राएं या आपने और स्पेसिफिकली उस जगह में इस चीज के बारे में सोचने में व्हाट वाज योर थॉट प्रोसेस लाइक
So I think firstly yes it's a very impactful project it's something that really has been around for many years now but it's still relevant and it is something that people share a lot it's become a bit of a selfie point a lot of tourists also they take rubbings of the meanings of those mudras so it's a very interactive and engaging sort of experience and the journey that took us to that project is very it's a surprising journey. It was not something that we predicted or knew where it's leading.
You never thought about this going so viral and
no, not at all. We thought it's just another project. But I think in the early stages of the project, the scale was massive. So we knew that we had to give it a lot of importance. So, like you have these movies, Mission Impossible. If there's a big project, you have to, first thing that happens in Mission Impossible is you have to put the right team together.
Yeah.
Right? You'll see all these heist movies. They first put the Ocean's 11 together. Who are these 11 people who will really make it happen? So I think in these really pivotal projects, the first step as a leader that you have to realize is that you may not have that entire perfect team with you. So you have to get the team together. And in the case of the Mudras, we partnered with an international branding company called Landor, which was very experienced in doing work for airlines.
Okay.
So we were able to extrapolate that airlines and airports are basically targeting the same people. So getting international capability and experience in that domain would really inform the journey in a much more, I would say, in a more effective way. So we got the right team on board. Even amongst our team, we had to choose the right folks who could work at that scale. So they were architects, they were designers, product designers, they were engineers, they were project managers. There were some MBAs on the project who were also looking at the commercial side. And also, our partners put together a team with us. So first was to, when we got that project, to put the best team together.
Okay.
I think a lot of credit in such projects also goes to the client. See, it was their vision to have something of that scale.
So the मुद्राओं का जो idea था वो आपका था या client से आया था क्या था?
So what happened is that they had this gigantic space in the airport and it was a skylit space. It's called the Canyon Wall and that's where the mudras are. And when the client came to us, their basic idea was that the airport was very modern, very well engineered, very contemporary use of the latest materials and technologies. But for that same reason, it lacked that sense of place. It didn't have that Indian soul. So this was a need, a void in the project which the client felt. And they came to us and said, how can you help us? And is branding the answer? So we also assume that yes, branding will play a role and the visual graphics, what we call environmental graphics, they'll play a role. And that's how we assembled this great team. But what really happened is when we saw the Canyon Wall, we said this is something too important to do in 2 dimensions.
Okay.
So because we are industrial designers, because we are architects, it became a very natural response for us that a space which has so much potential needs a 3-dimensional intervention. So how to see branding in 2D and 3D was the first big insight. And I think the client was very excited about the 3-dimensional potential of that space. And we pitched a lot of ideas. I think we must have done 20 different ideas. They were doors and windows from India. There were masks. We were also wanting to speak to some really iconic artists who were internationally known, like Anish Kapoor and other. Maybe they could do something with us, like a collaboration. But time was short, budget was limited. The Commonwealth Games were just around the corner. So they were everything, the constraints were really coming really close, and just 6 months were left. So out of all the ideas that we had pitched to the client, the idea of using mudras to express expressive India was something that the client really liked. And then we did again a whole lot of brainstorming how to interpret that idea in a way that works in the space but also doesn't overpower the space. So I don't think uh, it wasn't an eureka moment that yes, this is what's going to happen. It was very hard, the process of brainstorming, analyzing, coming up with many ideas, and then out of those ideas refining the ones which the client liked. They liked 4 or 5 ideas, and then we all collectively felt that this is the right idea. So that process took many months to reach that point, but the core driver was this idea of expressing India in a very creative way. And then dance and yoga and the mudras which are used in both, they became like a sign language, like a way to talk to the people of the world without having any text. And then of course people are also come to India for spirituality, for yoga, for our culture, for the dance. So we felt it's a great symbol of India, which is also in a way very secular, because it's not a religious symbol, but there are meanings embedded in science.
Right.
So those were the ideas that made it very, very compelling and tangible. And then things fell in place, and it was a process of engineering it, finding the right partners to implement it, and also ensuring that the materials and the processes, they work with the technical constraints of this. So I think I would like to clarify that we don't give it to somebody else.
Okay.
We work with somebody else. And it is always that notion of synergy, that there is always something we don't know, there is always something we can learn, and there is something that we know which we can combine with what others know. So it is really making that, I call it constructive assembly of ideas. I think the way to make partnerships, collaborations work is to be very generous, not get too involved with whose idea is it, who originated the idea, but focus more on how can we take this idea to the right conclusion. And I think a lot of designers start with a lot of ego, and that all becomes mixed up with the ownership of the idea, and who came up with it first, and so on and so forth. So I would just like to clarify, it's important to respect ownership, because there is an intellectual process that creates ownership, and it's not easy to do that, to come up with something new. So one has to respect, recognize, and celebrate who came up with the idea. But then after one has done that, the focus should also evolve to making it
the final project,
executing it. And there you have to give a little bit, take a little bit, and share a little bit, and ensure that ultimately the result is what the client wants. So I think creative folks don't need to get too obsessed with what's important for them and their ego. It is more important for them to realize that they're serving a client, and that service needs to translate into great outcomes. So it's like even a surgeon is not really worried who's gonna use the scalpel first, and is the anesthetist the most important, or is the person who's sewing up the open heart the most important. They're not worried about that. Their goal is to ensure that the patient is well at the end of the journey. It's the exact same for collaborative design. And you can't run big projects, you can't run a big studio without that collaborative mindset. The moment that comes in that there is an arrogance, or there is a lack of sharing, or selective sharing of information, constant worrying about whose idea is it, and all of that, then it's not going to land it. I'm not saying any of these things are unimportant. It's not what obsesses, or it's not what you obsess over when you are actually working on the project.
Okay. So, Amit, like you mentioned, there are multiple times when, trust me, I think you have been blessed with a lot of clients who give you that sort of freedom to experiment, to explore a lot of, I would say, facets of design. But sometimes kya hota hai ki there are positions where you have to decide whether you want the money or you want to implement your design more, right? And that, I would say, dilemma is always with the designers who are starting, right? So when should they pick the design over money, or it should be the other way around to survive in this industry?
See, again, I think when you are a young designer earlier in the journey, you have to give a lot more. You have to be a lot more flexible. all with the eventual goal in mind. Don't lose that goal. But you have to recognize that when somebody is trying you out for the first time, they want more agency, they want more participation. So the way to deal with it is that in your mind you have to say design is not one person's idea. In Incubis we call it's a team sport, and the client is also a part of that team, right? So the moment you see design as a team sport, it's exactly like that surgery example. It's exactly like a soccer match.
Okay.
Ultimately, somebody is a striker, somebody is passing, but you have to win that match. So you have to score.
Right.
Right. So sometimes it's a give and take, and the client is also an important collaborator because it is their brief. The client is going to live with that design if it's a space. The client is going to manufacture, produce, and hopefully earn profits from your creation.
Right.
So they have a huge role to take it to reality. And if it doesn't serve them, then what's the point? You will get the next project of even bigger scale only because the first client is satisfied that you served their need and it was profitable. Remember, design is serving a business need, or design is serving a personal need, or both. If I'm designing a home for somebody and I'm only trying to tell them how they should live, that's not going to be fair to them because it's a negotiation. I'm going to tell them that from my professional knowledge, what is best for them, and they have to tell me that this is how they live, and I have to absorb some of that, and we
design accordingly.
We work in that collaborative way. So we have to collaborate with our clients, we have to collaborate with our teams, we have to collaborate with other partners who come in. So the rules of collaboration, the methods of collaboration are going to apply to all these situations. So if you signal very early on, so you are asking how do you get your first few clients, if you signal that you are the kind of person who people can work with easily, you're not rigid, you're easygoing, you're comfortable to work with, if you can communicate that, you'll find that you will create that pull that people say, yeah, this is the person we want to work with.
And the clients will come back again and
yes,
again.
Because a lot of architects and designers in the past have come across as these creative geniuses who are not collaborative, or who don't collaborate enough, or who are trying to impose their will on the client. That is something people push back.
Right.
Unless you are the sort of client who says, I don't care about my own ideas, there's this genius, let them figure it all out. There are clients like that. But it takes some time to find them and for them to find you.
Right.
Right. In the initial stages, every client is going to be very different. Like I said, figure out what they are expecting, looking for, and without diluting your principles, without diluting your aesthetic identity, find that balance where it works for both of them, for you and for them.
That's a very interesting take actually, because I haven't seen a lot of clients. I would say बहुत सारे designers भी ये बात समझते हैं कि eventually design is solving a need, whether it is business or it may be a client need.
Not eventually, primarily.
Primarily,
yeah.
Right, that's right. So Amit, you have been also a mentor to a lot of young architects, designers, and as well as I know you are also an investor in a lot of new startups which are specifically into design or architect space, right? So what is that one quality that you see in all these founders who have this thrill, or I would say that urge to start their own, and anything that you feel that the young designers should have in themselves who are starting now, or I would say starting from scratch right now?
So I think those qualities are very similar to qualities that entrepreneurs have in general, but creative entrepreneurs are a little different because they also have a huge belief in their own ideas, in the power of their ideas, where their ideas can take them. So I think that's the most important thing, not just being good at numbers and not just having the enthusiasm, but really having that outsized belief that my ideas can go somewhere. And I think that's always very compelling. That excites me to see young people with that conviction. And the second thing is also the ability to form a team, to have exactly what I was saying, that ability to collaborate easily. Because if they have that collaborative ability, that's a success factor from my perspective. And I think the third thing is to be able to learn in a very accelerated timeline, because now more than ever, the landscape in which we operate is changing almost daily. There could be a new software tool, there could be a new technology.
AI is coming together.
Yeah, so I mean, all these things require you to be very focused on self-development and learning.
Okay.
So if I was to summarize, it's about creative conviction, it's about that accelerated learning curve, and it's that ability to work with people in that very collaborative way. And this is no different from how we would work even within our organization. I mean, that's generally a set of success parameters for creative professionals.
Right.
And none of it means that you're going to not think about money. None of it means that you're not commercially minded. That's hygiene in any business.
Business, right.
But then every business will succeed if it is differentiated. So it's only that creative component that will make you distinct from make one studio or one business distinct from another.
So how do you, like for example, if I'm starting young, I'm a 23-year-old, I'm just out of college, what do you think are the three things or say two things which will set me apart as a design firm or anybody who's starting young from maybe say the noise? Because let's be honest, right now in design firms and also architecture firms, there's so many people around, right? How do you how do you make yourself so distinguished that the client finds you like, yes, let me work with this specific design
So
firm?
you have to see what makes you different as a human being and project that.
Okay.
Tell people this is what's special about me. The second is multiply that distinction or that sense of difference within the team that you're working with. So create a team that also has that
brings those
qualities, which will say, okay, like I was saying, complementary skills or whatever. So first it's you, then it's your team, and the third is, I would say, that ability to say that you can take something from start to end, give that conviction. So it's about confidence. See, confidence it's not empty confidence, it's confidence that's rooted in a lot of knowledge, or rooted in the fact that yes, you will figure it out. I mean, we've done a lot of projects where we were kind of clueless at the start. When we did our first hotel,
Seriously?
or when we did our first stadium, how do you do something for the first time? The only way you can do something for the first time is you and the client are equally convinced that you're going to learn about it really fast. So when we did our first hospital, when we did our first hotel, when we did our first stadium, these were really massive projects with very little time for actual execution. Client wanted creativity, but they wanted something that was structurally very, very complex. In terms of the layouts, in terms of the human aspect, how they're going to be used, it was very complex. We had never done it before, never done projects at that scale. But the only thing that got us those projects was signaling without any doubt that these folks are going to learn and deliver.
And during this project, did you collaborate with anybody, or
sometimes yes, sometimes no.
evaluate?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But usually when we do something for the first time, we make sure there's an expert on our side.
Okay.
Because that also helps the client get that confidence that they're not trying to do it themselves. They've got the best person for this job as a part of their team. So it's very important to ensure that the partner that you select is not just a partner with knowledge. They are one of the best in the industry.
And that's how you build the portfolio
Yes,
as well.
yes.
And you start venturing into new
Yes, because we've got the best to teach us, the best to guide us, the best to mentor us.
Right.
So don't go for second best in anything.
So Amit, एक बहुत important aspect होता है whether you should start the firm or whether you should not start the firm. Like for example, आपके हिसाब से when is the correct time I should actually start my own? Any say 2 or 3 red flags or green flags which will give me a right signal कि it's the right time that I should start my own, or I should wait till I get maybe say do a job, get a market exposure, etc.
So I think how I would deal with it is that first know yourself. I think the most important thing is to be able to figure out whether you are an entrepreneur or not. So understand whether your characteristics are overlaying with what you need as an entrepreneur. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, not everybody should be an entrepreneur. And it is obvious that no great organization will be built only on the strength of the entrepreneur. They need a great team. So you have to see whether you want to be a founder or you want to be a part of a team.
Okay.
So that's a choice that will be made based on your knowledge about your own characteristics, how you deal with people, how you deal in situations, and what are your own circumstances. A lot of people who can be entrepreneurs don't have the ecosystem that allows them to be entrepreneurs because they may not have the financial backing, or they may not have access to a family support system. There are so many little ingredients that give you that ability to take the plunge. So it's also about being in your mind absolutely clear that yes, I have the circumstances that will allow me to take the leap, and I am the kind of person that can take the leap, right? Or you can say I'm going to find somebody who's doing this and I'm going to be a part of their team and I'm going to add immense value as a team player.
Okay.
So not everybody has to go through this journey. It's not an easy journey. There are huge amounts of uncertainty, and even emotionally and in terms of how you deal with it, it's not for everybody to be in that situation. So know yourself. I would say that's the first thing, and know your circumstances. Will they facilitate that uncertainty? Right? If you have invested a lot in your education, your family has invested a lot in the education, and they expect, or maybe the bank expects, sometimes you got student loans that you need to pay them back within a finite timeline. Then you have to get into a set of circumstances that allows you to do that. Maybe entrepreneurship done well will allow you to not only do that but exceed expectations. But maybe you say, I'm not going to be comfortable having so many loans on my head and doing something which is even more uncertain.
Okay.
So know yourself, know your background, know your circumstances, and take that decision. You can still take the entrepreneurial decision if you are confident that no, this doesn't matter, I'm going to make it happen. Right? So you have to have that outsized belief in yourself, and the confidence and the knowledge, the ability to learn, and the ecosystem and context. All of these things have to come together. Maybe after working in industry for 5 years, you paid up your loans, and parental expectations are not so much. You have become independent. You feel, yeah, this is the right time to take the plunge.
And it can be maybe say 5 years, 20
Yeah,
years,
yeah. 20 years. A lot of very successful businesses were started by people in their 40s and 50s. In fact, that's the most successful cohort. So it is just a myth that the young folks are the ones who are going to create the next unicorns. A lot of people who are in their, maybe having a midlife crisis are saying, no, I'm going to chuck all this and I'm going to start afresh. Right? So there's no perfect time, but knowing yourself and your circumstances will allow you to take the next step. Of course, in general, if you get used to being an entrepreneur earlier in your journey, that's not a bad thing.
It just makes you adverse to the risks, I guess.
Yeah, and you have nothing much to lose also.
Okay.
But you have to learn a lot more. So there's an asymmetry there. You have to be on a hyper accelerated learning curve, but you have nothing to lose.
It's just that I think at a younger age you have lesser risks. That's why you
lesser responsibilities towards others.
Okay.
Your responsibility is towards yourself, and maybe to your bank, maybe to your parents.
Right.
Whoever has supported your education. But if your parents say it doesn't matter, do where your dreams take you, then take that chance. Yeah, go for it. If you feel you can do it, if you feel that it's not something that I am wired up to do, I would love to be a part of a startup. Maybe there's a designer who's already established. I would love to be a part of their team. You can also be an entrepreneur in residence. You can be an intrapreneur. People use these terms. Being entrepreneurial within an organization. We've had those examples. People have come, they've become a part of our team, and they've created new dimensions which we didn't imagine were possible.
Would you like to name any?
Yeah, I mean, we've had situations where, somebody came in and said, okay, we can do 3D modeling. So I said, okay, can you start a company and do it? No, they said, no, we'll work with you and we'll create a team. So they've been able to do that. So I would say that's a very good example of entrepreneurship. Somebody comes in and says, I have great branding and graphic skills. Why aren't we doing that? So we went and did that. So the growth of the organization, the wide set of possibilities that we've tried to explore are all driven by people who could take us there.
And they had the confidence to do it.
Yeah, but they also knew that we have got a momentum. The organization is already moving forward. So they can get onto the moving bus and, add some, width to it or bandwidth to it, whatever you may call that.
So Amit, you have been supporting these startups a lot, right? And sometimes you're not prepared for few XYZ things. Any 2 or 3 things, reality checks that you would like to give our young entrepreneurs out there? Ki, guys, be prepared for this. Guys, be prepared for this. Any 3 things that you would like to
say? See, these are all cliches, but they are all facts. One is that, entrepreneurship, especially in the early years, it's like a sine wave. It will have its ups and it will have its downs. So if you are not ready to take that emotional roller coaster, and the people around you are not ready to take that emotional roller coaster, don't get onto the ride.
Right.
You may be able to take it, but maybe your girlfriend or your boyfriend and your parents are saying, you're going through this upheaval all the time, you're constantly working, we don't even see you, it's not on. Then you are going to have one additional piece of chaos in your life which you don't want, or which you don't need. Right? So having the right partners who are with you, having the right mindset in the family that you have, and the friends that you have, is going to help you take that decision. It's not just about you alone.
The support system helps a lot.
Either it's a support system, or there are certain constraints in the support system which you have to recognize. You can't be blind to them, or you have to be ready for the consequences. Both are something that you have to be ready for. The other is that you have to be ready to work extremely hard. I mean, any entrepreneur who's taken the leap but taken their organization to the next level, there are no weekends, there is no schedule, there is no, sometimes day and night also kind of becomes one. None of those should matter. Now, I'm not trying to at all suggest that, you have to be this person who's, projecting this very toxic work-life, lack of work-life balance. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just that entrepreneurship needs you to push something which has no velocity to extreme velocity.
There are times when you have
so you have to push really hard sometimes, and you have to have a team that is willing to push with you. But suppose they fall by the wayside, you have to still be there.
Right.
And no entrepreneur who's really taken their organization to the next level has been able to do it without exceptional investment of time and effort. It hasn't happened. Unless there's a silver spoon somewhere, it doesn't happen. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. It needs it. And the other thing is that don't assume that after 5 years of putting exceptional effort, it will be on a roller coaster that just goes up.
Yeah.
That also is a myth. You can have those sudden changes in the economy, in the technology context, in the regulatory environment.
Do you still worry about paying the salaries every month?
Not every month, but sometimes when we are making a new investment, or when we are trying to shift direction, that computation still comes in, that how many months salary do we have?
Do we have the runway for the next
absolutely,
few years?
Yes. A few months sometimes.
Few months.
Yes. We don't have that kind of that extremely large reserves to think in years. Sometimes it is still in months. And when the pandemic happened, that's when those stress points became very, very crucial and obvious, that these are the things. It's so precarious because we were not ready for it. We weren't trained for those crisis situations.
And you should be prepared.
Yeah, you should be prepared. You should have. And when the crisis hits, you have to not get overwhelmed. You have to fix the problem solving.
Problem solving coming into play.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Amit, for joining us. And trust me, these insights are very important for all these entrepreneurs who are out there and who are starting new or starting from scratch. And of course, I think they will reach out to you more now for more guidance and everything.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.